to the Life After 50 show. It's what you need to know for the second half of your journey. I'm Katherine Watson, and I'll be your host today. Today's show is sponsored by FindHoustonSeniorCare.com. FindHoustonSeniorCare.com is a web directory with resources for the Houston and surrounding areas. We have over 500 articles, podcasts, and videos on the website to help you get the answers you need. You can connect with assisted living facilities, residential care homes, elder law attorneys, hospice companies, home care, and so much more. FindHoustonSeniorCare.com. Today's show, every week we bring you different experts to speak to you about subjects that matter. And today's show is an interesting one. Tabasco sauce and estate planning? I'm curious about that connection. We're going to be talking with Elizabeth Hilbin. Elizabeth Hilbin is with the Hilbin Law Firm here in Cypress, Texas. And I'm really happy to have her on the show. She is a wealth of knowledge. I have heard her speak many times and gone to several of her workshops that she offers on a weekly basis or almost weekly basis, at least a couple of times a month, I believe, to the public. She has so much information and she has such a caring heart. Elizabeth Hilbin is a board-certified estate planning and probate law attorney by the Texas Board of Legal Specialization. She's also an accredited attorney with the Department of Veterans Affairs, and her services include areas of planning with the elderly, veterans pensions, estate planning, personal wills, powers of attorney, asset protection, and guardianships. She offers guidance in Medicaid and long-term care planning, and she specializes in probate, estate, and trust administration. Her legal services also include planning for retirement, business succession, and special needs planning. She can help a lot of people, right? I bet every one of you listening today, if you don't need her services, you probably know somebody who does. Feel free to add your comments in the comment section below. If you have a question for Elizabeth, we will try to get to them in the show. But this is only a 30-minute program, so if we don't get to your question during the show, Elizabeth will be glad to answer your questions after the show. So go ahead and put them in the comments section. Like I mentioned before, what's unique about this particular law firm is their education. Elizabeth is just a very heart-centered professional, and she really wants to educate families about the legal process and what they need. So she offers complimentary workshops 2 to 3 times a month. Some of them are during the day, some of them are in the evening. So whether you're working during the day or you can't make the evening, you can make one that will fit into your schedule. Elizabeth and her office manager, Teresa Troll, also recently formed a nonprofit entity called the Living Legacy Center. This center empowers veterans, senior citizens, and those with intellectual and developmental disabilities to be able to access relevant information to their specific needs. Elizabeth's personal mission is to be legal support for families during times that are stressful and overwhelming. And like many of us in the industry, I think Elizabeth would like to reach you before it's too stressful and overwhelming. So without further ado, let me just go ahead and bring Elizabeth on so she can talk to us and tell us about this title, Tabasco Sauce and Estate Planning. And here she is. Thanks, Elizabeth. Welcome.
Hello. How's everybody? I hope good out there. And so I'm really excited about this topic this morning. And you're like, what does Tabasco sauce and estate planning have to do with each other? And, really, can be considered a boring topic. And so we want to spice it up this morning so we can keep you engaged and help you actually follow through with your planning.
Great. So, Elizabeth, talk to us about what does estate planning consist of? What does that mean? Do I have to have $1 million to do estate planning?
Great. So estate planning, historically, if you think back many years ago, you could go to the bank and cash a check, and perhaps even to the Kroger grocery store and cash a check and not need an ID with you because you knew the clerk. Well, those things have changed. You can't just call your doctor up and ask for a prescription. You've got to actually schedule an appointment now. So estate planning has actually modified from what it was in the past. And what has happened is that estate planning is now documentation, actually putting everything on paper, making sure it's done legally, making sure that you have the proper witnesses, the notary, and making sure that all of your wishes are actually conveyed to your beneficiaries or to your children, if you have children, or your other beneficiaries, in a manner that they understand, and teaching them on how to use those documents, teaching you how to use the documents so that when you do have that time of need, you're not confused. You know exactly what to do. And I'm glad you mentioned the workshops. We actually are now offering them every week. We're trying to do at least a lunch and learn or an evening one as well.
And I just put the link up there. And Elizabeth, we are having a little reverb problem. If you could put your headset in, and I'm going to do the same. Then
absolutely.
We'll clear up our audio. Bear with us, everybody.
Sometimes these technological things.
There we go. Okay. Go ahead.
How does that sound?
I think we're fine now.
Great.
All right. Great.
So estate planning, we really want to start with the education process. A lot of people come to me and say, well, I need a will or I need a trust. And really educating everyone on how those documents actually work, so that when you do have to use them, you're familiar with when you'd use them and how you'd use them. And because a lot of people you're presenting them to actually don't even know how to use them. So that's what we do in our workshops. We educate you from the beginning of it and then bring it all the way forward from there.
Okay. So not everybody would probably need a trust, but everybody needs a will, correct?
Well, it's just a lot of people say, well, I don't have anything. Why do I need a will, or do I need estate planning? And I tell folks that the less you have, the more you need these documents. So estate planning not just covers a will or a trust, it actually covers, a power of attorney, medical power of attorney, a financial power of attorney. And so a lot of times people say, well, which one should I get? Should I have a will or should I have a trust? And really they work. We've used the analogy, they're one may be an apple, one may be an orange. So you may need one or both in your estate plan, but how do you know which one you need unless you know exactly how they work? So I'm going to kind of give you a brief overview of what is a will and what is a trust. Is that okay, Catherine?
Okay. That would be great. Thank you.
Great. So a will, I kind of look at that as a closed box. It really covers three things. It covers who is getting my stuff, when are they going to get my stuff, and who is in control. And in a will, the person that's in control is your executor. That's the person that you name, that you trust. And really when one does a will, they do it and they pretty much put it on a shelf. In fact, usually it's about 27 and a half years before someone would actually upgrade their will or redo their will. So when I'm doing planning for families, if I do a will for you, we're gonna actually make sure that we address all sorts of situations. So because I'm kind of looking at your estate planning that you may not do something for another 27 years, we want to make sure it works for you. So a will is something we put on the shelf. We don't use it unless you have to go through probate. And I'm going to talk a little bit about what probate is. Probate is a process by which you actually will bring your will, or you won't because you won't be here, but your executor will bring your will to the court and have you'll be declared as a deceased person, and the will be declared as your last will and testament. And at that point, the person that you named would become in charge. But when you're really looking at the difference between a will and a trust, you have to look at your beneficiary designations. So we have to go to the bank for a minute. So Catherine, it's okay for us to head over to the bank for a minute, right?
Right.
Okay. So think about how your beneficiaries are set up. Maybe you have a joint account. Who gets that money if you were to pass away? Maybe you have life insurance or 401k or an IRA, and you've named a beneficiary. Well, the beneficiary is going to trump a will or a trust. So it's a contract with a bank or a financial institution. So if at the time that you pass away, the only thing that you have is a bank account and your beneficiary is alive and able to receive your money, you may not need a will or a trust at all. But we just don't know what those circumstances are. I think we all know we are going to die. Well, I hope you guys know that. And hopefully you know where you're going as well. And if not, we can chat about that privately. But we want to make sure that not only our will lines out exactly what happens to everything, but our beneficiary designations are connected and they make sense. So when you're looking at your estate planning, you want to make sure you focus not only on the papers, but you also want to focus on the banking institutions and the financial institutions to make sure their paperwork is correct. The other thing that we talk about in estate planning is, wow, who are your beneficiaries? So maybe you don't have children or you don't like your children. Maybe we want to look at who are those beneficiaries? Would it be a niece or a nephew or a good family friend, a charity? I even have clients that leave trusts for their dogs or their cats, and we love those. Those are called pet trusts. And so we have a lot of that we do for folks, but we want to really think about who those people are. Can they manage money? Do they have any special circumstances that are going on with them? Perhaps they need some special language built into the trust or into the will that protects them. Maybe they have a credit problem or even a drug and alcohol problem. And so we want to make sure that the will that you do or the trust that you do covers those situations. So I believe, Catherine, on the will side, I feel like we've kind of covered the basics of what a will is. And if with your permission, I'll move on to what is a trust. Is that okay?
Absolutely. Please.
Okay. So great. So when we look at wills, of course, they go through probate. Now we're going to move into trust. And what are trusts? So if you think about a trust as like maybe a little red wagon you had when you were little, and you can put your stuff in it. So you would put your house in it. You would put your bank accounts in it. You would put your investment accounts into it. You would put your personal instructions inside of a trust. So it's a document that we draft, and then we put certain items in there. So you would retitle your house by a deed into the trust. You would retitle your bank accounts into the trust's name. And then you would be the trustee. So you're the one in control. And when you're thinking about a trust, it's really just an alter ego to yourself. You're able to actually write checks out, pay bills, sell your house. There's no additional tax filing requirements. There's no additional fancy things that are needed for a trust. It's just a way to consolidate your assets into one place with your written instructions and avoid probate if that's what you want to do. So a trust does not go through probate. It is a private type of document that you do. It is not subject to a court's control. So once you pass away, all that really needs to happen in most cases is a presentation of a death certificate to a financial entity. And then you would have full access to those funds and those assets as the successor trustee of the trust. But whether you do a will or you do a trust, you really want to focus most of your time thinking about who is it that I trust to take care of my stuff. So is it a personal family friend? Is it a bank, perhaps? We use corporate trustees. So maybe your kids are not old enough or responsible enough to manage things. We could actually use a bank or a trust company to manage our affairs. And so when you're looking at a will or a trust, guess what? Neither one of them work unless you really focus on how your beneficiaries are set up. So we always think that when we do our planning, this is a team approach. We want to work with your financial advisor, your banker, your HR department, whoever it is, to make sure that our beneficiaries are going to match what your will or your trust say at the end of the day. So that's the basic differences of a will versus a trust.
Okay. All right. So what about probate? What is probate?
So we talked a little bit about probate earlier. You would only go through probate if you had an asset that did not have a beneficiary designation or had a beneficiary designation that listed your will or your trust inside of your will. You're like, oh my goodness, now what? We have a will with a trust. So a lot of times we build our wills with trusts. So that might be for a minor beneficiary. And I always say for a minor beneficiary, in the state of Texas is 18. In the Hilbin household, it's a lot older. And since this is a Facebook Live event, I can't pick on any of my kids. But, you want to make sure that you've got something written in there that's going to protect them. But probate is a process in the state of Texas that we actually would carry your will to the court. We would have someone testify that you had passed away. And we'd also have someone testify that this is your last will and testament. Like I said earlier, it is a public proceeding. It takes about 3 or 4 months to take care of that business in the courts. You do have to do a notice to creditors in the newspaper. And so anyone who wants to take a look at your will can actually take a look at your will. So that really comes into, wow, okay, does that matter to me? Does it not matter to me? And you think about, a lot of times people do what we call do-it-yourself wills online. Mm-hmm. Probate could be really simple unless you actually do a will perhaps on your own and you don't have it signed or witnessed correctly. So those are one of the challenges that we've seen with probate. And some of the bad stories that we've heard about probate had to do with wills that were even handwritten. There's actually a guy wrote his last will on the fender of his tractor.
Oh my gosh. Are you kidding?
The fender of his tractor was admitted as his will. He had accidentally fallen off his tractor and the tractor ran over him and he scratched his will on the fender.
Oh, that's hilarious.
So,
I bet you've heard some interesting stories.
I have, and I've seen a lot of interesting situations. So one thing that I really want to share with you, that if you're in a blended family, it is so important to make sure your wishes are on paper. We have a lot of unique ways to deal with blended family issues to make sure those children from the prior relationship don't feel left out, but yet making sure the new spouse is taken care of after your death. And so I want to pay special attention to that. The other thing I would share with you is, even if you don't agree with your spouse on how things should go, come anyway. Because a lot of times we can talk through those issues and come up with the solution. So back in the 90s, I actually took training on mediation, and I became a mediator, and I mediated for a few years cases. And so it helps me actually mediate with families who have those blended family issues arise.
Yeah.
So we are full of unique ideas.
That is so important. I have several friends that have gone through those kinds of challenges. And it's hard enough when your family is not a blended family. You're just a family. And it can be challenging working with each other. But when you have a blended family, it just makes it a lot more difficult. So it is important that you get everything set out and everybody understands.
Correct. So just kind of wrap up estate planning. We talked about wills and trusts, and this is, like I said, a primer, a basic topic. We do in our workshops that we do here at the office every week, really delve a little deeper into the differences between will or trust. Also on our website, we do have a blog about what is a will, what is a trust, things of that nature. You can visit that and read it. But when you're thinking about your estate planning, think big, right? Think we need a medical power of attorney. We need a financial power of attorney. So we need our directives to physicians. That's our life support decisions. We need to start thinking about, do I want to be buried? Do I want to be cremated? Do I want to make special provisions for anyone that's named in my documents? And, a lot of times I do have people spice it up on their documents. And so they'll add all sorts of fun things, perhaps for their children. And you should see some of the disposition of remains documentation that we do. But we encourage you to have a little fun with your estate planning. Really get out there and start talking about it. Because, this is another thing I tell people is a lot of times they worry about their personal effects. But I tell them, there's no trailer hitch on a hearse, right? There's no U-Haul going with you. Yeah. And I have a good girlfriend who is just, she might even be on today, Pam Bergeson. We got to make sure she has the right shoes on. She and my friend Mirna, they want to pick out their best shoes for their burial. So you could do all sorts of fun things and have a good time with it as well. So that's one thing we encourage.
It's not a subject that a lot of us want to talk about, but it is a needed subject. And I think if you bring some humor into it, it makes it so much easier for the whole family.
It does. In fact, as part of what we do at our law firm, we do all sorts of educational workshops. And next Monday, we're actually doing one with Stephanie Salcedo. She's with Secure Your Legacy. And we're doing a funeral planning workshop. And guess what? We're doing that at the Houston Funeral Museum. We're going to tour the museum. We're going to drink some Undertaker root beer. And then we're going to talk about how we plan our funeral. So,
that sounds really great.
Because if you don't plan it, guess what? It's going to be last minute, and everyone's going to be mad at you that you didn't put it together. So
Exactly. Elizabeth, we're getting low on time. I do have a couple of other questions. Let's see what we can get to. Talk to me a little bit about Medicaid. How do you qualify for it? But before you do, let's explain the difference between Medicare and Medicaid, because I think a lot of people get confused about those two words.
Great. So part of estate planning is not just your end of life paperwork. Part of estate planning we feel is what we call life care planning. So we're going to plan for your end of life, but then we're going to segue right into our 201 classes that have to do with life care planning. So how are we going to live our life without losing all of our money to a nursing home or to a long-term care crisis? And so as we do that, we need to know the differences between the benefits that are out there. So if you think, we do a lot of workshops on that too. We use lots of different people to do those, but Medicare generally is going to be a health insurance benefit that you get after the age of 65. So remember, I got to do the little lawyer disclaimer is that this is general legal advice. You are always welcome to come chat with me personally to talk about your family situation. But Medicare is a health insurance benefit, while Medicaid is actually a benefit. It's a welfare benefit. We have over 40 programs in Texas that you could explore. But when we're talking about Medicaid, we're talking about really almost like room and board at a skilled nursing facility. So that's a nice way to put a nursing home. And so Medicaid is a benefit that people utilize in two situations. One, if they personally ran out of money to take care of their benefits and take care of themselves. Or two, if they have a spouse that gets ill early. And early is just a relative term because early could be 90 years old because we're living a long time because doctors are doing such a great job keeping us alive. So that's a good end of that, right? But Medicaid is a benefit sometimes that we put a unhealthy spouse on while we're able to save and keep all the money for the healthy spouse for his or her lifetime in the future. So how do you qualify for it? Well, it is a means tested program. So we got to look at income. We have to look at resources. And it isn't just an evaluation that we do, but we take a look at it in every family situation. We had a 22-year-old on Medicaid this year, and we have all ages that end up on that program. So if you don't have a long-term care plan or long-term care insurance or have enough money to care for you, if you have a very serious illness or disease that occurs in your life, we're going to put together a plan on how that's going to work for you. So a lot of people think, oh, you have to give away your home, you have to give away everything, you have to wait 5 years. Those are all myths. Those are not true. And so we really want to sit down with you and visit with you personally. Even if your spouse is in a nursing home or your loved one is in a nursing home already, let's sit down and talk about the possibilities there for you. Because it is a benefit that has lots of little things that we can apply to help our families.
Mm-hmm. Good. And the last question, I think we have just a couple of minutes. What is Veterans Aid and Attendance Pension, and how do you qualify?
Great. So
we've got about 3 minutes.
Excellent. I'll get it out. Just like Medicaid, veterans benefits are actually also a means tested program. It is a program that pays our veterans and our surviving spouses of veterans who served during a war period. It will pay them a direct cash benefit in order to help them pay for their long-term care. Assisted living, nursing home, bringing care in the home, those are all available. So if you did serve in the military, we want to chat with you. We want to explain how to get that benefit, how to get prepared for that benefit. Even if you're not in that situation yet, let's get started early. So we always believe in spicing it up. We have a lot of fun over here at our law firm. We have laughter workshops. We have, I said funeral workshops, but all sorts of workshops and fun events that we have over here. So come hang out with us in Cypress. We're right off of Jones Road.
Thanks so much for being on the show today, Elizabeth. I really appreciate it. And everybody give Elizabeth a round of applause. Let us know if you're watching the show. Just make a comment below. Again, we come here every week to give you information that you need to know for Life After 50. If you'd like to be a guest or a sponsor on the show, we'd love to have you fill out the application at findhoustonseniorcare.com /guest-application. And I'm putting that up on the screen now. We will probably bring Elizabeth back. She's, like I said, got a wealth of information, lots and lots of help that she can give us. And I see we had a lot of, I couldn't see the comments before for some reason, but Jill Baker Carroll was on, Erica Holmes was on. We really appreciate everybody that came on to listen to the show today, and I hope it was helpful for you. Next week, I'm going to have Chad Jolly on with Synergy Home Care. He is going to be talking about dementia and can I keep mom at home? So that's something we want to talk about, how to keep someone home if they do have dementia, and how to know when it's time to maybe move them. All right. Until next week, I'm Catherine Watson signing off with Life After 50, what you need to know. Have a wonderful, wonderful week.